Welcome to Ayurveda and Spirituality with your host, Alakananda Ma, a renowned Ayurvedic expert and a graduate of a top London medical school. She is the principal of Alundi Ayurveda Gurukula, a unique apprenticeship-style school in Boulder, Colorado. She is a spiritual mother, teacher, flower essence maker, and storyteller. Join us as we uncover the timeless principles of Ayurveda, discover practical tips for enhancing vitality, and explore the deeper dimensions of spirituality that intertwine with the ancient science of life. Today on the podcast, we are sharing a recording from the archives.
Today we're here to talk about understanding money and abundance. We'll begin with a story. Long ago, it was the end of the Golden Age, and all the treasures of the Golden Age were buried beneath a vast ocean of milk. So the gods and the demons, with their eye on these treasures, got together to churn the ocean of milk. And the gods lined up on one side and the demons on the other, and using Mount Meru, the world mountain, as a churning stick, and Vasuki, the cosmic serpent, as a churning rope, they churned the ocean of milk. There are many, many parts to this story, and we won't tell them all tonight, but gradually out of this ocean of milk, all the treasures of the Golden Age came forth. Out came the Kamadhenu, the cow whose udders yield whatever you might desire, and the Parijata, the wish-fulfilling tree which can give off any fragrance you wish, and Airavata, the great mount of Indra, a mighty elephant, and the wish-fulfilling gem. And the nectar of immortality came out too. This was the origin, actually, of Ayurveda. And finally, last but definitely not least, from out of the ocean of milk, there emerged a beautiful lotus bud. And the lotus bud opened into a lotus boat, and standing on the lotus boat, an exquisitely beautiful woman, clad in a lotus-colored sari, with long hair falling below her waist. A radiantly beautiful face. She has 4 arms, and in 2 of her hands she holds the fully bloomed lotus of devotion that has completely unfolded. And with another hand she makes the gesture, "Have no fear," and with another hand the gesture, "I bestow boons," and a constant stream of golden coins flows from her hand. This is Lakshmi. She is the goddess of abundance. She is actually money in the form of a goddess. Our word money comes from Juno Moneta, She was the goddess of the Romans before Juno became identified with Hera, who was the consort of Zeus. Juno was the great mother. And in the basement of her temple, that is, in the womb of the great mother, all the coins of the realm of Rome were minted. And that's why it was called money, because it came from the womb of Juno Moneta. Even our word capital means head of cattle. And cattle, too, are sacred to the mother. Money was that which came forth from the mother in order to bless us with abundance. Many, aside from the coins of gold, which was stamped with a beautiful image of the mother, we also used conch shells or cowrie shells, another image of the Divine Mother, a feminine image, to exchange as money, or else heads of cattle, different ways in which we invoke the presence of the Mother in our forms of money. Money is a manifestation of the abundance of the Mother. Money is a medium of exchange, a measure of wealth, and a store of value. And these are all things that Mother wants us to have, because if we don't have money as a medium of exchange, that means, suppose I have pots to sell, and I need salt from you, but you already have enough pots, then I can't get any salt. But if we have money as a medium of exchange, then I can give you money and I can get the salt, and you can go get some corn, because you didn't need any more pots, but you need some corn to put in them. We also need to have a store of value so that we can provide for those who depend upon us. This is another thing that Mother wants us to have, is to be able to save up money or to make provision for those whom we might leave behind or those who might depend upon us. So money is a manifestation of the Mother's abundance in wanting us to be able to enrich our lives, take care of others, have what we need, provide for ourselves, provide for others, and provide for our community. However, 4,000 years ago, we, especially in the Western world, made a radical break with the Mother. In the Eastern Hemisphere, the Mother was not broken with. Simply the paradigms of the Father were grafted on top of the Mother. But in the Western world, which is now coming to be worldwide pretty much of a dominant culture, we made a radical break with the Mother. So we have the whole mythology of Adam and Eve and the serpent and the apple, and how the seed of woman shall crush the serpent's head, because the serpent is the ancient symbol of the power of the Mother. And now the power of the Mother has been in thrall for the last 4,000 years. It's as if we might picture one of the beautiful terracotta figurines of the Mother, which were the main worship objects that we had prior to 4,000 years ago. She had the great hanging breasts and hanging belly. Some people say she's a pregnant mother, but others have pointed out that actually she's a woman elder. Things do start to go forwards when you get older. She has the hanging breasts and the hanging belly. She is the ancient Mother. It's as if we have taken this figurine and smashed it into pieces. And each of those lost pieces is something that has become taboo because we have broken with the Mother. That includes love, sexuality, intimacy, relationships, women, animals, the earth, money. These are all things that belong to the Mother and are important taboo aspects of our current society. Things that we kind of feel bad about, or think we should dominate, or we don't feel comfortable about. So today we're going to pick up the shard, or the piece that's about money, and try to understand it a little better. I'm going to address 4 main misconceptions about money. The first is that money is evil, so you shouldn't have it. The second is that you ought to have money, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you. The third is that money is merely a neutral medium of exchange. And the fourth is that our current financial system is something permanent and immutable, like the law of gravity. But these are all misconceptions. They are mutually contradictory, and yet I promise you that you do actually simultaneously hold all 4 of them. We'll begin with the first. Money is evil, so you shouldn't have it. Now we all know that money is evil, right? Because the Bible said, right, that money is the root of evil, right? No. The Bible said that? No. The Bible said the love of money is the root of evil. And that is a very big difference. Because loving money is like the miser living in a miserable hovel, brooding over his coins, and not even having a decent meal because he's in love with a medium of exchange. So loving money, which is actually meant to circulate and be a medium of exchange, loving money is a root of evil, not money. The Bible doesn't actually say that money is evil. might make the talk too long. You really want me to tell that story? Mulla Nasruddin, Sutherland is prompting me to tell a story about Mulla Nasruddin, who came from Afghanistan and came wandering down onto the hot plains of what is now Pakistan, but back then it was all India. And it's really hot there, much hotter than it is in Afghanistan. He's getting thirsty. He would just love some nice juicy fruit because it's so hot on the plains of India, but he's only got a couple of little copper coins just then. He sees a vendor by the roadside with a big basket of nice red fruit. He hands him his little copper coin, wondering if he could maybe get one fruit. To his surprise, because this particular fruit is not very expensive in India, the vendor hands him the entire basket of fruit and goes off home, satisfied with his day's work. Mulla Nasruddin sits down and begins to eat. Some hours later, an old friend comes wandering along the road to see Mulla Nasruddin staunchly eating his fruit. "Friend," said the fellow Afghani, "what are you doing? Those are the chili peppers of India. They are very, very bad for you." "I know," croaked Mulla Nasruddin, who by now had almost no voice left, "but now I am no longer eating fruit. I am eating my money." He spent his 2 copper coins on this fruit, so he had to eat them up. So it's actually the love of money, or the feeling that we've got to get our money's worth. Eat it all up. Don't waste it. I paid for it. I spent good money on that. It's the love of money that causes us problems. But money in itself is not evil. Our idea that money is evil comes out of the fact that we have broken with and cast down the mother and everything that belongs to her. So whether it's sex or money or relationships or anything else that belongs to the mother, we're kind of squeamish about it because it's probably not really okay to get into that kind of stuff. And if I was really spiritual, I wouldn't have any of that. The trouble is I'm not really spiritual enough, so I have to mess around with, what's it called somewhere in the Bible? Filthy lucre. I have to kind of mess around with it. Understand that this is our misconception because we made such a radical break with the mother, so that's why we feel oftentimes squeamish or uncomfortable about money or have a kind of an idea that it's something that spiritual people shouldn't really get involved with. Okay, actually, money is not evil. Money is the mother's way of nourishing us. It's how we relate to money that could be good or evil, but not money in itself. Now, second, a very important misconception that we have is that you ought to have money, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you. Now, this comes out of the whole Protestant ethic. A few hundred years ago, back when the Catholics and the Protestants were debating about whether we were justified by faith or justified by works, Calvin came up with a whole new idea that solved the problem. We're actually justified by predestination. Nothing you can do to get justified because it's predestination. So that means from the beginning you're either predestined for salvation or you're predestined for reprobation. And there's nothing you can do about it. So every day when you get up, you're going to have a kind of an uneasy feeling about this. I remember when I was a little girl, because we had scripture lessons in school that came within this whole Protestant way of thinking, I would be lying in bed thinking, how do I really know? I mean, how do I know if I'm going to be able to be saved? 8 years old, and it's very hard to figure it out. So actually, within this particular theological paradigm, taking this a certain way, we could be starting to feel rather uneasy. How do we know if we're predestined or not? So this Calvinist Protestant theology gets grafted onto burgeoning capitalism, which is coming up at the same time. And especially in America, where the pilgrims are coming and bringing a lot of both of the same ideas, together with manifest destiny and so on and so on. Now we have the whole mix. If I prosper, that will be the sign that I am among the elect. And that's okay, because that makes it all right for me to be a factory boss, be in a nice house, and get rich while other people are sweating and toiling in very poor conditions for almost nothing, because the very fact that they're living in those conditions and suffering like that simply proves that they're reprobate, so they don't deserve anything anyway. Okay, I'm putting in very kind of simple, almost caricatured terms, but this is a very important part of the thinking that has gone into making up the whole atmosphere in this country at this time. That the just will prosper and the reprobate will be suffering in poverty. So therefore, we don't need to do anything about poverty and injustice, because by definition, the people who are suffering that, they're destined to do that, and they're going to suffer not only now, but forever. Well, of course, this is a yoga studio, and we're all really enlightened people, and we don't think like that, do we? Aha! And now we have the whole New Age philosophy, which is Calvinism and drag. Right? Some of you are getting it right away. I don't even have to explain it. Right? If you're sick, if you're poor, what is blocking you? Okay? Now, if we really look at our own minds carefully, when we get up in the morning, do we really have it in our hearts that the person in Africa who's in a little hut, dying of AIDS, with not enough to eat, is just as precious as us? Do we really have that in our hearts? Very often when we get up in the morning, we don't really have that in our hearts. We actually feel that somehow or other, I'm privileged because in my own mind, somewhere back there, I'm kind of elect or something. I'm more evolved. The fact that I'm privileged, and essentially everyone in this country is pretty much privileged. The fact that I'm privileged, it proves that I deserve it. So we're actually doing the same thing. I know that there is a lot of poverty and people that do struggle in this country, but having lived in Africa, seeing every day children dying of measles because they didn't have enough to eat, I feel that people suffer much more. Actually, there are people that are suffering much more. So to kind of free ourselves from this mental bondage we have about money, we first of all have to understand that little child that's dying of measles because they never had enough to eat in their whole life, so their immune system is weak, or that person in the hut with AIDS who's not getting enough to eat and is all alone because the rest of their family died, really is just as important as us. They are just as precious as us. They have the same dreams, the same vision, the same hopes, and the same potential that we do. Once we understand that, it starts to untangle our remnants of this manifest destiny and Protestant work ethic in our own minds. Because as well as our sort of subconscious feeling that we're privileged because we deserve to be, is also this nagging guilt of suppose we're not. In other words, most of us get up up most mornings or go to bed most nights wondering why it is I can't get it together to have more money. What's wrong with me that I never have enough? And we take it very personally. And of course, it's getting harder and harder now. Now it's not just dauber bums and poor people. It's middle class people as well, with the stacks of bills and the payments on this and that. Dr. Lard, my Ayurveda teacher, when he came to America after a few years, he said to me in great disillusionment, I thought when I come to America I'd have a house. He said, but the bank owns the house and the bank owns the car too. I don't have anything. The bank owns everything. It's the poor middle class person, right, struggling with all the payments and the stacks of bills, still having this feeling that I never quite have enough. I wonder what's wrong with me, why I feel that I don't have enough. At this moment, we're taking personal responsibility for a structural and economic problem that is not of our making. And it's because we're hooked into these things. The money is evil and I shouldn't have it, and you ought to have money, and if you don't, something's wrong with you. Actually, having money is good. Mother wants us to have money. Mother wants us to have exactly enough money to meet our needs, support those who depend upon us, and give to those who are less fortunate than ourselves. Mother doesn't really want someone, and Jim Hightower was just last week talking about how this is true of CEOs, someone who's making $10 million a year is not necessarily in Mother's plan for it to be that way. Do you get what I'm saying? Part of when New Age thinking goes astray is the sense that the pie is limitless, and actually the pie is a pie, and I should take my size piece. If we each took our own size piece, there'd be a piece for everybody on the planet. But if I'm taking 3 pieces, someone else is actually going to go hungry, because we can't use our mind power to limitlessly magnify the pie. It doesn't really work like that. It's about circulating energy and learning to share and working together. Not about me and I'll get mine, which again is inherent in the way that we're trained, especially within this culture. I got mine, now you get yours. Money doesn't work like that. That goes back to being Nasruddin eating his whole thing of chili peppers because I paid for them. Or the miser like groveling over his coins. It's not about I got mine, you get yours. If it became we take care of us, then there will be plenty of money for everyone because it will circulate in a flow. So that leads to the other 2 misconceptions, that money is merely a neutral medium of exchange, and that our current financial system is something like the laws of gravity, a given that can't be changed. Money is not a neutral medium of exchange. According to how we design our financial system is how we design our society. There are many ways that we can design financial systems. Currently, very deliberately, but by a set of very calculated and deliberate choices made by important people a few hundred years ago, we have chosen to create a financial system that fosters the values, if you can call them values, of competition and greed. The way we've structured our current financial system leads to a sense of greed on the part of those who have it, and powerlessness on the part of those that don't, and a general atmosphere of competition. We don't have to structure financial systems that way, and there have been times and places in history when it wasn't done that way. For instance, in ancient Egypt, at a time when there were sacred cats and sacred cows, and the mother goddess was very, very important, The prophet Joseph designed an excellent financial system. The prophet Joseph was sent into exile in Egypt, and one of the things he did was create a financial system. He created a financial system that would lead to abundance for all. Because here's how it works. You take 10 sacks of grain and you deposit them in the granary. And you get an ostracon, which is just a piece of shard of pottery which has your 10 sacks of grain written on it. Now you come back at the end of the year to redeem your ostracon. So you want to get your 10 sacks of grain back. And to your surprise, you get 9. And you say, oh, but this ostracon says that I deposited 10 sacks of grain with you. And the keeper of the granary says, yes, I know, but the thing is, there's the security, the security guards here, we all have to be paid. We have to get milk for the kitty cats that guard your grain from the mice. We have to pay the utilities on the building. That all costs money. So storing your grain costs money. And you stored your grain here for a year, so now you get 9 sacks back. So what does that mean? That's a very primitive form of what's known as demurrage, which means if you hoard it, you'll end up with less of it. If you didn't leave your 10 sacks of grain all sit there for the whole year, if you circulated them, if you exchanged them with others, you exchanged them with the old woman that did sewing and she made you a nice outfit and then she had grain to eat. If you circulated and exchanged your money and kept it flowing in the system, then it would never become less. But if you try to hoard it and hold on to it, you'll actually end up with less. A very similar kind of financial system was created in Europe in the Middle Ages, again in a time when the Great Mother, at this time in the form of Mary, was very predominant. At that time they had 2 types of money: the coin of the realm and the type of money that was used in international currency. So with the coin of the realm, the same thing happened. Every few years it was recalled and reminted, and if you gave in 10 of the coin of the realm, you'd get back 8 or 9 of the new ones. That prevents inflation, and it makes you want to keep your money circulating. You don't want to hold on to it and lock it away and hoard it, because it's just going to become less next time it's reminted. What you want to do is keep spending it, keep it circulating in the system, which means more and more people are having more and more exchanges, so there's more abundance for everyone. So that's examples of financial systems that were created to allow for a lot of exchange and a sense of plenty. Within these financial systems, everyone had a sense of plenty. If you lived at those times, you didn't wake up in the morning feeling like, why is it I never have enough money? Because you always had enough. Just kept circulating around and you always had enough for your needs. What we're doing with our current financial system is the exact opposite. It's being created deliberately so that you will wake up in the morning feeling like, how is it I never have enough money? If you didn't wake up in the morning feeling like that, Alan Greenspan would not be doing his job. It is his job to make sure that you never have enough money. Because this financial system that we've created depends on scarcity. That's the way it's been set up. Our current financial system has 4 main characteristics. First of all, it's what's known as fiat currency. It's been created out of nothing. Someone literally said, let there be dollars, and let there be X many dollars, and there are dollars. There are no heads of cattle, there are no coins of gold, there are no cowrie shells, there is nothing to actually stand behind your dollars. They're simply pieces of paper or numbers in a computer. That's what's meant by fiat currency. It doesn't really represent anything that is of genuine value. Second, we've chosen to create currencies that reinforce national identities. That's what's been very special about the euro, because the euro is a currency that tends to draw people together and break down national identities, because now you can start traveling in Ireland and go all the way through Europe and never need to change money. You know, you lose money every time you change money. It's much more handy that you can just keep exchanging money freely between all these different countries. But the dollar, for instance, another thing it's about is reinforcing a sense of a closed national identity. So our financial system supports the nation state as a way that people are separated out from one another. Other two features are, it is built on bank debt and it utilizes compound interest. And compound interest and bank debt are the reasons why this financial system that we have right now causes us to always wake up in the morning with this uneasy feeling that I don't have enough money. I don't know why. I'm working hard. I'm saving. I'm planning. I'm thinking the right thoughts. I'm visualizing abundance. But what's going wrong? What's going wrong is that the system is rotten. Let's say, I'm going to quote from Boulder because I don't know about house prices here, but in Boulder, a pretty decent but not extravagant house in Boulder is going to cost $500,000. That's actually quite a steal, quite a deal to get a house that costs that little in Boulder. I mean, it's sort of affordable for a fairly well-to-do, struggling middle-class person. I got a house for $500,000. Now, if you add it up, that you're going to pay, say, for 25 or 30 years on that $500,000 house, the person that buys that house is going to spend $2 million at least on that house that was such a deal. That's because of compound interest, which means interest on interest, and interest on the interest on the interest. I have a young friend who came to me in great distress, and he said, my biggest he's a father of a 2-year-old, at that time a 1-year-old. He says, my biggest problem is I'm in debt. And every month I have to pay so much money to the credit card company. And he's in construction. So he's going to work really hard, you know, he's shooting himself with nail guns and deafening his ears and breathing toxic fumes so he can pay this money to the credit card company. So I say, could you please show me your debt? So he brings me his debt and I look at it and I say, this debt is for $2,000. Do you realize that to most adults, $2,000 is not a lot of money? And you're going to spend so much more than $2,000 to the credit card company. I said, look, here's what to do. Go to your grandmother, ask her to pay your debt. So he does. And to his grandmother, who was an old lady, accumulated a lot of money in her life, and she's going to die soon. Sure, I'll pay your debt, no problem. He would have paid $10,000 or $12,000 on this credit card debt because of compound interest. Well, some of us in the room might be thinking, of course, this only affects the middle-class people in the room with their house payments and their car payments, and they're paying on this and they're paying on that and they're paying. I don't have any myself. I don't have any credit cards. I don't own anything. Compound interest doesn't affect me, does it? Oh, yes, it does. Because when I go to the store and I buy a nice loaf of whole wheat bread, an organic avocado, and some lettuce to make my sandwich, something like 30 or 40% of the cost of that avocado and that loaf of bread is compound interest. The compound interest that got paid on the grocery store, on the facilities that grew or created this food, on the trucking company, all that compound interest got factored into the cost of my loaf of bread. So even the complete dropout from the world of credit cards and owning anything and apparently completely dropped out of the whole thing we are still paying that compound interest on every single thing we buy. The poor migrant worker is paying compound interest on their beans and their potatoes, which is all they can about afford to eat. Because compound interest is imbued in the whole system. Compound interest means someone else who isn't doing anything is making money off of anything that you're buying. In Dante's Inferno, he journeys through the circles of hell, and there is one very complex situation. There's a circle of hell that Dante comes to, which is the hell of sexual perversion. Well, of course, first of all, because back then it's the Middle Ages and people are very ignorant back then, so gays and lesbians are going to be put by Dante in that circle. It's the Middle Ages. It's nearly 1,000 years ago. People are ignorant. They don't know what's what back then. But very interesting that also in this circle of hell are the usurers. Why are the usurers there? Because the usurers are breeding with money. And that is a perverted sexual activity. So, the Catholic Church made one, well, maybe made others, but has made one big mistake. They left the gays and lesbians in hell and let the usurers out. They should have done it the other way round. They should have left the usurers in hell and let the gays and lesbians out. This is my favorite joke right now. It's actually not really funny. Homophobia kills, and so does usury. So that's why it's very, very important that we don't need to have gays and lesbians in hell, because we will not make it to the new paradigm without all of us together. We will not get there if we don't get there all together. Every single one of us is precious, and we need all our unique expressions to share. That's part of the abundance that we have, is our varied expressions of our sexuality. Usury kills because the little child in Africa who's dying of measles is fundamentally dying because of usury. There's a very sad story about this. The president of, I think it's Nigeria, and I hope I have these facts right, but it's the basic general idea anyway. He says, in the beginning, we only borrowed $5 billion. We already paid back $12 billion, and now we are being told we have to pay another $15 billion. He said, if you will ask me what is the worst evil in the world, I will tell you that it is compound interest. Because in our kindness to quote-unquote developing countries, the IMF, etc., lends these countries money on interest, on compound interest, so that you borrow money so that you can create an education system and a healthcare system like developed countries are supposed to have, and then you have to dismantle everything that you created in order to pay back the debt, and you're still paying back more. So compound interest kills. It's very, very dangerous. And the sad fact is that as long as anyone is going to go to work in Haiti in terrible conditions for $1 a day, one day we're all going to have to do that. I'm seeing it happening in Boulder. I have a friend who works at IBM. You all heard of IBM? Boulder basically lives on the federal labs, the university, and high tech. So my friend is having to fire people in Boulder who moved to Boulder to have that job, who have their house, their family, and their life in Boulder, so they can give that job to someone in Russia or India. And I don't really understand why so many Indian gurus feel like high tech is going to save India, because outsourcing is part of what's destroying the world's economy. Why should they work for less just because they're Indian? It doesn't really make sense. But what it's doing is, this man that did work for IBM, well, there was a man we met who moved to Boulder to work in high tech, and for the last 10 years has been a checker at CompUSA behind a cash register, because his job is outsourced. So he can't care for his family in the way that he thought he would. He can't put his kids through college like he thought he was going to be able to, and like his parents put him through college. It's the whole sense of how we're doing it with bank debt and compound interest is dividing us one against another. It can't keep going the way it's going, so the financial system is going to crash, and especially the dollar is going to crash sometime fairly soon. And when it crashes, it's going to be bad, and people are going to suffer. Could anything be done about this? There are ways that we can make the impending financial catastrophe less disastrous by already beginning to build in what needs to come in its place. This financial system needs to crash because it's rotten, because usury kills, because millions of people are dying of not enough to eat because of this system that we have. And remember that these people are just as important and just as precious and just as valuable and have just as much potential as you and me. That's really true. It's hard to believe it until you see it. When I brought back my slides from Africa when I was working in a children's ward in Tanzania, people couldn't even see that there was a child in the bed because the child was so thin. Like nothing could almost be seen. This is the effect of this financial system. So it's good in a sense that it needs to crash, but if it simply crash lands with no parachute, so many people are going to suffer. How can we create a parachute? We can create a parachute by beginning to bring in what is to come. What is to come? Moving from competition to cooperation. I heard in the whole Chicago there's no co-op. I couldn't believe it. I spent 5 years working to create a co-op in Boulder, and I don't know if we will actually make it in the competitive natural foods market, the Whole Foods and Wild Oats, but we sure have tried, and we have come together, and we have worked together, and whether we do end up with a viable co-op or not, we have built something by bringing our hearts together to try to cooperate. We can create cooperatives, or buying clubs, which is another way to cooperate to get a little more control over our food and our eating. We can create alternative financial systems, such things as time dollars or let's systems. And by the way, those have to be done properly or they cause inflation. But an example is a system that's set up in Japan. You live in Tokyo and your mom lives in the village, so you can't shop for your elderly mom. But there's an old lady 3 blocks down who is in Tokyo, but their kids are in another town, so there's no one to shop for her. So you shop for her, and you get credit hours for shopping for her and checking on her and seeing that she's okay. And you bank those credit hours and use them to compensate someone else to shop for your mom and check on your mom back in the village. So that's an kind of alternative currency. Working with time, everybody's time is of equal value, and that kind of currency matches unmet needs, such as shopping for my mom, with unused resources, which is the 2 hours on Sunday afternoon that you would have shopped for your mom, but you get to shop for someone else's mom instead. So that's just one simple example. There are many examples, but there are ways that we can actually start to exchange in different ways that don't involve compound interest. So cooperatives, alternative financial systems, most of all, building community and beginning to care for each other. It's like the story that I always like to tell about the Hindu woman in the slum in Calcutta, and Mother Teresa's nuns learnt that she'd had no food for a week, and they rush and bring the food over to her, and they're completely astonished when the first thing she does is divide all the food in half. They say, "What are you doing?" And she says, "The Muslim woman next door, my neighbor, they also haven't eaten for a week." She's looking out for her neighbor. She will always look out for her neighbor. Her neighbor will always look out for her. So whatever goes wrong in the world, they'll have that strength of supporting each other. Coming together in community, in whatever way we can, building a fabric of connection, caring, looking out for each other. That is the best way to healthily undermine a financial system that sets us one against each other. Because in our current financial system, if you've got it, I don't. But what we can create among ourselves is, if I see that you have what you need, everyone's life is going to be better. Understand what I'm trying to say? That there is a way that at a grassroots level we can address the kind of hold that our financial system has over us by beginning to think about each other and beginning to think about caring for each other. If you can't actually manage to start a co-op, because I know Chicago is a lot to take on, at least we can start trying any kind of networks. Like, one idea I'm always trying to suggest to my patients is, what about a lunch club or a dinner club? You know, what about you cook one day, you cook another day, and you cook another day, so everybody has more time. And you got to go to other people's houses and eat. Looks like you're already doing that. You go to her house, right? Yeah. Yeah. So what you're doing is already creating a solution by living in a co-op house where you all have more time, because you only have to cook, what was it, one day in 16 or something? Right. So you gotta have a good meal every day. So you have more time. So then you have more time to do your meditation, or to do your study, or to take care of your kids, or whatever is important in your life. Through beginning to come together and connect at a grassroots level, we can find our way back to the abundant heart of the mother, and even in the midst of living in a rotting and about to implode financial system, we still can create more sense of genuine abundance in our lives. Because in the end, the abundance that we really need is an abundance of heart, an abundance of connecting, an abundance of caring, and that more than anything else is what our current financial system robs us of, by casting us in the mode of competition. If we can come from competition to making whatever steps we can, you're making huge steps, and I admire you, especially in Chicago, to live that way is so great. Through any kind of community, cooperatives, whatever way we can find to connect more, because then, even in the midst of never quite having enough money to pay our bills, we're still going to experience more abundance in our lives. It's getting late, because due to the yoga class programs here, we started a little later than we usually start. Are there questions or comments? Don't be shy, it's okay. Anybody?
Are you in Chicago for? How long are you here for?
I'm actually leaving. We're leaving tomorrow morning. We're going to New York. But I'm sure we'll be back. Yeah. Because it's the first time, it's like harder for a word to get out the first time, and next time if you sign on the list, then you'll get an email beforehand and you'll know when we're coming and so on. It'll be easier to connect next time. Any questions?
I just want to say thank you. So beautiful to be here and be with everyone.
Yeah. Right. It's beautiful to be with everyone. I think that's such an important part of what this is about. I'm really not interested in just developing along this like charismatic leader model and have it all be about me and like how great I am and how I can like, you know, come along and do whatever for everyone. The point is, it's so beautiful to be with everyone. That's really what it's about. It's what we can all create together. It's bringing people together in the heart. That's much more important.
Food crop at True Nature, 3 blocks north. There's a home food store. Yeah. Paula runs it. So if you're...
It's small.
It's very small.
It's a co-op?
Yeah, it's a co-op. Oh. It's right here in the neighborhood. Yeah.
It's a co-op, like you can buy a share in
You
it?
can buy a share of produce of certain things. You may...
Organic food, you know, whatever they sell. We just saw it too.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's one in Rogers Park.
And also...
And that's a co-op?
Actually, the farmers also have a co-op. The Illinois farmers.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you can buy into their produce, a share of the produce, and you pay beforehand and they grow it for you, and it's a win-win situation.
Well, what would be great coming out of this talk would be if we could like pool some of these resources that people know about, so we could email everyone on our list about it.
You the information.
Yes. Now I'll send it to Shannon.
Yeah, and Shannon will get our list, because it's good to let people know about these efforts so that we can all support such efforts. You know, what people have already begun, that we can support that. Anything else? Sorry for this is pretty much the most intellectual of all the talks that I give, but it's also a very important one. And the reason why there's 2 reasons why I started giving this particular talk on my list of talks that I offer. The first is because I found when I would go and I would speak about the Divine Mother and spirituality and vision of altruism and compassion, people would always say, but I can't do it because I've got no money. And that's my main problem. So then I realized that I have to address why people feel so blocked around money. And the other thing is that I promised my finance teacher, Bernard Liatar, who is one of the people that started the Euro, and Sadananda gave me a chance to go learn a little bit with him. I promised him that I would share this piece, because understanding these misconceptions about money and cutting through them is very, very important to being able to come into a world where we live in altruism and we care about each other and we care about the earth. And that's basic. My main message is really fundamentally that we're coming into the age of altruism. Like His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, altruism is the new religion of all humanity. Whatever your practice, whatever your path, whatever your teacher, whatever your beliefs, altruism is the new religion of all humanity. And that's fundamentally what my message is to share some inspiration and some different tools and angles towards being able to live the life of altruism, because it's the only happy life. It's the life of genuine happiness. When we really live for others, it's not that it's an easy life, but it is a life of genuine happiness. You get to go to bed happy at night because you know that your day was worthwhile if you were kind to someone.
Thank you for tuning in to Ayurveda and Spirituality with Alakananda Ma. We hope today's exploration has ignited a spark of curiosity and insight within you. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and share it with a friend. For more enlightening discussions and practical wisdom on Ayurveda and spirituality, subscribe and join our Facebook group, Alundi Ayurveda. To allow us to continue sharing valuable content, consider donating to Alundi Ashram. The links will be in the show notes. Until next time, may you walk the path of Ayurveda with grace and embrace the light of spiritual wisdom in your journey. Trayambakam yajamahe Sugandham